Hey everyone, so in this video I wanted to talk about gaming monitors, such as resolution and refresh rates. A common question that I've seen asked is if you're gaming on a 60Hz monitor, can you really tell the difference if you jump to a 144Hz monitor or a 240Hz monitor? Now, back when I was gaming on a conventional 60Hz monitor, I felt that this was the only real way to game, and all the other higher refresh monitors were kind of just a gimmick and they really didn't offer you that much more performance for how much they were worth. Now, after buying a 144Hz monitor and then a 240Hz monitor, wow, I was completely wrong. So, to whoever is out there and wondering the same question, I think this video can help you out. For now, let's just talk about refresh rates first, then we can dive into resolutions later. So, some backstory on me. I mainly play FPS games on PC and console, and I've been doing it at 60Hz for some time now, especially on PC. I remember being all about resolution and pushing the limits of resolution over frame rate. I thought games were best played at a higher resolution as long as you could reach that 60 frames per second, and depending upon the game and the gamer, this isn't necessarily wrong. I was playing Battlefield 1 on PC at 4K 60Hz at ultra settings, and I thought I had the ultimate gaming experience that couldn't get any better. And to be honest, it really was, despite my change of heart that I'll get to later in this video. There was a Black Friday some years ago and I saw a 1080p 144Hz monitor on sale for $250. Now this was years and years ago, so back then this was a pretty damn good deal. It was a 27-inch AOC panel, nothing fancy other than the 144Hz. My thought process was, I'm just going to buy this thing and see what all the fuss is about. As I was waiting for this to come in the mail, I felt that I was making a mistake. After being used to 4K, how can I go back down to 1080p? Once this panel showed up at my door and got everything plugged in, I booted up Battlefield 4 and changed all the settings to make sure it was playing at 144Hz consistently. Immediately my jaw dropped and hit the floor. Everything looked like it was soft butter just melting through my mouse as I was swaying it back and forth targeting my enemies. I even noticed that it was easier to control the recoil. I had a slight advantage in response over 60Hz when it comes to seeing my enemy run around corners. I felt as if everything was in slow motion even though it obviously wasn't. It was at that point that I realized I made a big mistake investing all of my money into 4K panels. Now before I seem like I'm completely sold even though I pretty much was, let me finish so I can give you all the pros and cons, because there definitely are some. So to answer this question, can you see a difference between 60Hz and 144Hz? The answer is a giant yes. I will talk about 240Hz right after, so don't worry. If you're an FPS gamer, you will definitely get the most out of a high refresh rate monitor. But with that being said, even if you play games like World of Warcraft, you can still see a difference in smoothness. However, you definitely do not need a high refresh rate monitor to be a competitive player in those types of games. It's simply just to be eye candy. FPS games, on the other hand, definitely give you an edge at a higher frame rate than 60Hz. So if you're nervous about getting a 144Hz monitor while you're still stuck on a 60Hz display, don't be nervous, it's definitely worth it, especially if you're an FPS gamer. But I will say this, you do need a PC that can hit 144 frames, keep that in mind. But 1080p does look immensely better at 144Hz than 60Hz, almost as if the game was completely reworked. It's something you have to see for yourself, I can't really explain it. Going back to 60Hz at 1080p, everything looks dull, or it has this film grain turned all the way up. I just hate it and it looks kind of gross. Almost as if things are just always blurry all the time. So don't worry about staying at 1080p. I only mention this because they have 1440p displays at 144Hz. They're pretty popular, but those are even harder to run. I think a 1080p 144Hz monitor is far more feasible, unless you have like a GTX 1080 or better. I mean, a 1070 might barely make the cut if you're running at 1440p, but I think you should just stick with 1080p at 144Hz. You're gonna have a much easier time getting that high refresh target, and the games will look good. So as long as your computer can hit 144 frames at 1080p, don't be nervous, it's totally worth it. You will notice a difference, and I think you're going to kind of turn the cheek when it comes to resolution, because as soon as you see these frame rates and how buttery smooth everything is, especially if you're an FPS gamer, you're going to switch sides, just like I did. And I used to be heavily towards higher resolution, and then I saw what 144Hz can do, and it's just amazing. Okay, now let's switch gears and go over to 240 hertz. Now this is a little bit different. I gamed at 144 hertz for a while. It was a huge jump over 60 hertz. I went back all the time at various games. Some games did show it off better than others, I will say that. Battlefield 4 is by far the best, in my opinion. In all of my testing, Battlefield 4 shows off what a high refresh monitor can do far more than any other game. There are other games out there that I hardly notice a difference. But those games were not necessarily FPS games, usually just like open world games. I'm trying to think of something, for example. The older Call of Duty games, which most of them were locked at 90 frames, but some of the other ones were higher refresh. I think Black Ops 3 was. I kind of noticed a difference, not really. I mean, I did notice it, but it wasn't as deep or as big as Battlefield 4 was. So for the most part, you will always notice a difference, but try to stick to FPS games if you are one. Another game, Left 4 Dead 2, has an unlocked frame rate. I did notice a difference again, but still, it was minimal. Something to do with Battlefield 4, and along with Battlefield 1 as well, both those games. Something about Battlefield, when you're playing at a high refresh rate, it just looks amazing, and it's so noticeable. So just keep that in mind, but going from 60 to 144 hertz for like the 5th time already, it's definitely worth it. Okay, now 240 hertz. This is a little bit controversial, and because I was teased with a high refresh rate monitor, and it was so great, I needed to have like the best. Like I needed to have, oh, they have a 240 hertz monitor. I need to have that. I need to just experience how could you make something so great be even better? So I went out and bought one. I bought the Acer Predator. I don't remember the model number. It was about $600. Comes with G-Sync. No HDR, which sucks, but oh well. And I will say this. First of all, it is really fucking hard to get 240 hertz or 240 frames, even at 1080p. I have two GTX 1070s in SLI and an i7 with 16 gigs of RAM, which may not be the smartest build with putting two 1070s in SLI, but it's still a damn good PC, and I could still run games probably a lot better than most. I would argue I have a higher end computer than most. So, and that's with current games. I have a hard time running current games at that refresh rate. I would say Battlefield 4, keep going back to that example because it looks so good. It caps off at 200 frames, but if you go into the console, you can actually unlock it. And I can get, on medium settings at 1080p, I can get about 220 frames if I'm only playing it in a lobby with like 20 people. If I'm playing Conquest or playing in a match with like 32 people, I'm not going to get that. I get like about 180. I will say this. If you can't consistently push 240 hertz all the time, it's not worth it because you will not notice that difference. The difference from 60 hertz to 144 hertz is massive and very noticeable. The difference between 144 hertz to 240 hertz is noticeable, but not that much. Not even close to how big of a jump 60 to 144 was, even if you're running at 240 hertz consistently. Now, can you notice a difference? Yes. Yes, you can. There are some games where I turn the settings all the way down and low at 1080p, and I can get like 300 frames, and I'm constantly at 240, and I can notice. I absolutely can, but it's not that big, but it is noticeable. So, really, that's up to you. I would say this, in my experience from gaming at 4K, and then gaming at 144 hertz and 240 hertz, I would say this. I think the best way to go is 1080p, 144 hertz. And if you have a PC capable, go 1440p at 144 hertz. If it's capable, of course. If it's not, you can always lower the resolution until you can get 144 hertz. So I think that's the best way to go. Now, if you're like a pro FPS gamer, if you're on Cloud9 or something like that, with Shroud or whatever, and you just need to have the best possible advantage. Okay, yeah, I understand your point. However, that is an extreme case, and let me explain this. There's going to be people out there who are going to watch this video, and they're going to have the same mindset I have. Oh, I'm not really, a pro player, but I feel like I am, and and I want to just have the best of the best of the best, and nothing can hold me back. I had that mindset. I just wanted to have the best. Okay, let me just I'll save your wallet right now. Just don't do it. It's not that I regret buying this monitor, but if I could go back in time and stop myself, I probably would. Even though that pretty much describes what like regret would be. I know that's kind of I kind of just contradicted myself, but I only really regret it in the sense. I mean, I'm happy I have it. I'm not gonna sell it and get something else, but I paid $600 fucking dollars for it. And my 200 and my 144 hertz monitor was 200 it was $250. Granted, it was on sale and it was a Black Friday sale, but still, it's like fuck. I spent so much money on this monitor, and most of even with my high end enthusiast build, I can't even hit 240 hertz unless I'm playing a game that's kind of old. So for instance, the newer shit, like I'm playing the Battlefield 5 beta. Of course, it's probably not optimized. But even with optimizations, I was only getting like 80 frames at 1080p. Like that's nowhere near 240 hertz. And even with optimization updates, I'm not going to get anywhere near that. The latest Call of Duty that's been out for almost a year, Call of Duty World War II, I get like 120, 130 frames. I'm not even getting 144. Of course, getting 120, 130 is definitely noticeably different from 60, but I have a 240 hertz display. I'm not even getting close to it. And it's like, so what do I have to do now? Do I go out and buy 2080 Ti or RTX 2080s? Those things are $1,200. I'm not going to do that. No one else is. So it's just not really worth it, in my opinion. And the difference that you get it's noticeable, but it's minimal. So I just don't think it's worth it. I think at that point, increasing the resolution would be more, I don't want to say beneficial. I would say it's more of an eye candy deal. I think games would look prettier at that high refresh rate and high resolution versus going to the ultimate refresh rate at 240 hertz. So, in my opinion, of course, is all subjective. People can disagree, but in my opinion and in my experience, which I've had with all sorts of kinds of resolutions and refresh rates and games, the best way to go is 1080p, 144 hertz. But if you have a really good build, like if you have like two 1080 Ti's in SLI, or you got the 2080 Ti on pre-order right now, you can go with a 1440p, 144 hertz, and then you can rock that. So that's probably, in my opinion, that's probably the best way to go. So we'll see. I'm a little disappointed right now not with myself, but with how my 1070s are holding up. I mean, Battlefield 5, my 1070s are only a couple years old, and I'm I'm only like 20 frames above, 10 to 20 frames above 1080p with Battlefield 5, and I'm hoping when it comes out, it'll be optimized and play better. But I got two 1070s in SLI, and I'm barely pushing 60. Are you fucking serious? Back in the day, that was like $900 worth of graphics. It's like, holy shit, I'm like barely hitting 1080p. So disappointing. But so everything in a nutshell in this video would be, can you see the difference from 60 to 144 to 240 hertz? Yes, every jump you make, you can see a difference, but you really have to hit that target frame rate consistently. And if you can consistently hit 144, if you can consistently, not so much 144, even if you're jumping around from like 60 to 120 to 80 to 90, you can still notice it. I would say this. To see the difference between 144 and 240, you need to consistently hit 240. And if you can do that, then after a while you do get used to it and comfortable, where you can say, okay, yeah, this does look a bit smoother. And then when you go back down to 140, 144, you can go, okay, yeah, I can tell that it's not as smooth. But going from 60 to 144, I would say every step of the way, or everywhere in between, going 60 to 70, 80 to 90, all 120, 140, you can tell. So I hope this advice helps. I hope if you're in the market and you weren't sure on what to get, whether you want to go a high resolution or high refresh rate, that this helps you out. So I did all the backbreaking labor by busting open my pocketbook and spending a fuck ton of money on monitors and then realizing what I get. So I hope you take my advice. Just get a 1080p 144 hertz monitor. You'll be fine. everything will look great. And honestly, I think that's all you need. But hey, who the hell am I? Maybe you've got like three 2080 Ti's with that new NVIDIA NLink, and you're just pushing 4K 144 hertz or something crazy, which is kind of funny because they just came out with a 4K 144 hertz monitor. I guess that would be the best of both worlds, right? But I have no fucking idea what kind of computer you have to run that. I know it was Jack Frags did a review on Battlefield 5 with the 2080 Ti, and he was only getting about 80 frames at 1080p, but he did have ray tracing on, and I don't think it was optimized either. So with ray tracing off, I'm sure it'll be much, much higher, because ray tracing must just be fucking ball busting to run. But still, even if you had two of those in SLI, I don't think you're going to get any current games at that refresh rate. Or if you are, it's going to be barely hitting it. But I guess you could go back and play some older games like Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1 or Battlefront. Even the first Battlefront, not the first one, but not Battlefront 2, looks really good as far as the graphics go. So, who knows? All right, I'm done with the ramble. So comment if you have any questions. If I didn't articulate myself well enough, or if you have a question I didn't cover, and you're in the market to buy a display and you kind of just want to know what's up. So comment, and I'll get back to you on that. And as usual, guys, like, subscribe, and comment.